Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Product School webinar. Thanks for joining us today. Just in case you didn't know, Product School offers product management certificates online and at over 20 campuses worldwide. On top of that, every week we offer some amazing local product management events and host online webinars, live streams, and Ask Me Anything sessions. Head over to productschool.com after this webinar to check them out.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining my webinar today on a subject that I'm very passionate about, product management. Now, this is a discipline that has evolved over the last decade and is the most sought after job today, whether it's in a startup or a successful company. Now, people have gone from why do we need a product manager to how do we hire a good product manager. Now, in this session, I will cover a few topics based on my lessons learned and experience. And what I plan to cover are three main things. First is who's a product manager? What are the key skills and areas to focus on? Second, what are the different paths to get there? And third, how do you prepare for the PM interview? Now, each topic is quite elaborate, and I've tried to provide an overall summary and focus only on the key things that are required. Now, a little bit about my background. I was born and brought up in India. I did my engineering in computer science and landed a job as a software engineer for an IT firm. Now, as you can see, I have been in different roles, and my path towards becoming a product manager was completely non-linear. And this shows that there is nothing set in stone or a specific path that is defined to become a product manager. So now let's go to who is a product manager. Now, if you look at Wikipedia, this is the standard definition that comes up. So a product manager is somebody who owns the business strategy, is responsible for functional requirements, manages launch of features, coordinates work from different functions across the firm, and is responsible for the business success of the product. Now, there are a couple of things to keep in mind here. There are different types of PMs that exist today, and based on how product management is set up in the organization, the role varies according to this setup. So therefore, the stakeholders who give you the input to what you have to build is also different. So you could be a product manager for a customer-facing product. It could be a B2C or a B2B product where the end users are different. Or it could be an internal product where you're working on an internal tool and the users here could be the employees of your company. So you could be spending time in all of these areas listed here, or some of these, and the time spent in each of these areas will also be different according to what type of product manager you are. So what I like is this simple definition that I read somewhere. And this is applicable to any kind of product manager. So you are the person who is responsible for building the right product by identifying those customer needs and providing this value in using your product. And you do this by enabling and helping out the team who is building it. So this is a simple definition that kind of hits the right note when it comes to defining who a product manager is. Now let's look at some of the core focus areas for a product manager. Now, product management is not a one-off thing, right? It's a continuous process. So the first one obviously is the center of everything you do, which is the customer. So the way you understand, empathize, and manage customer needs and expectations. So you could do this by directly talking to your customers in the form of exploratory interviews, where you will have to be able to articulate their goals, understand their environment, where do they live, what devices they use, how do they use your product, and so on. Then you look at, are they struggling with a problem today, or do you see an opportunity to make an improvement? Now, if you look at the product vision board by Roman Pickler, I find that very useful. If you want to create a new vision for your product, it's a nice canvas to use and has all aspects, including product market fit, competition, and so on. And finally, what solution or functionality does your product need to have to address this problem or opportunity? Now, the second area is prioritization. Now, how do you know what features to build and when? And how do you make that decision? The most challenging task for PMs is prioritization because it involves people from different teams or functions. You have to collaborate with all of them and arrive at a decision and tell them why it is important. Why it is important you are building this feature or a solution for a customer. Now, there are different ways to prioritize. One of the most popular ones is the principle that is provided by Marty Kagan from his book Inspired. It's a great product book. So he says that there are three main things that you have to look at. The first one is whatever you're building, it has to be valuable to the customer. Second, it has to be usable by the customer. And third, it has to be feasible, which is basically looking at constraints on technology, people, and process. Now, the second one is Moscow, which is also popular, which is based on feature prioritization, which is the must-haves, the should-haves, the could-haves, and the would-have. So it's basically looking at what feature the customer really requires, what he can do away with. If you remove some features, is there some dissatisfaction, and so on. The third one is the Kano model. So this is more from a user perspective to choose the right features. So how do users feel if they have the feature or didn't have the feature? So they classify this based on 5 different types and then prioritize on what's important. Now, the fourth one is stakeholder scores. Now, you have to, once you have identified who are the stakeholders for your product, you can basically put a score like from 0 to 5 for each of the requirements that you have on your roadmap. And then you can also use this as an input to see, which feature should be built first versus second versus last and so on. So this kind of gives you a good view of what the entire team wants and how it can be translated to building this for the customer. Now, the third area, an important area, is execution. Now, this is where you put on your product owner hat. You take part in Scrum meetings with the team. Now, you could have a technical or a non-technical background, but I feel that you should be able to understand at a high level the overall solution, the different components, and how it's being built. Now, you will be respected when you show this understanding, and you kind of complement the engineering team. They will not look at you as someone who's just asking you to do things, and you can effectively participate in all the meetings as well. So there is always a tension between product and engineering teams, but I think it should be a healthy tension where they look up to you as someone who's adding value and helping them out in building the product. And one point to note is you will probably be more active in certain phases, like the initial phases or during the end of the cycle where the pilot and test phases begin, where you will be involved in hypothesis testing or A/B testing and collecting feedback from customers if you are kind of asking them to test the MVP and then take measures to pivot or continue with what you have planned in the roadmap. The last area is stakeholder management. Now, the picture here is justified. So because you are not the only person who is responsible for the product success, but there are many pieces to this puzzle, right? So there will be the designers, the developers, people from sales, marketing, your senior management team, legal team, and so on. And your product roadmap will evolve throughout the year, right? So stakeholders will have different needs based on their interactions with customers, but you should be able to push back or say no to requests that don't align to your product's vision or objective, right? So this is where you go back to your prioritization matrix. Always back it up with facts and data, and whether it is customer, market, or product metrics, and then come back to the stakeholders to see, where you can prioritize the requirements again and then take it forward. So it's very important, therefore, to assess the importance of stakeholders, who is giving you this input or requirement, how can you influence and engage them, and of course you have to keep them informed of all the decisions that you are taking. So it's always better to over communicate, and keep them in the loop for any kind of communication during the planning and execution phase. So now that you know the key skills, you have to decide if product management is the right path for you, right? So if you haven't decided, it's time to do a self-assessment. Now, whether you want to continue on the technical track, which is how to build a product, or you want to continue in the business track, which is what to build in a product. Now, understand where you are. Are you happy with your current job or role? And that, I think, is the most basic question that you have to ask yourself. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Are you passionate to solve customer problems? And do you have what it takes based on your understanding of what it takes to become a product manager? Now, a good way is to talk to people who are already working as PMs, and understand what are the different activities they are involved in, and see if you can, share with them what your expectations are. So it's very important that you kind of network with existing PMs to understand what it takes to do this job. Now, there are different paths to get there, right? There is no specific path you have to take, but here are some pointers on how to do this. Now, the first is the MBA route. Now, sometimes this is a prerequisite for a PM position, and sometimes it is not, right? It depends on the company. Now, since I did my MBA, I can tell you how it helped me change tracks. Now, it gives you definitely a broader sense of how a business works. How do you understand the different functions like strategy, marketing, and finance? It enhances your overall ability in problem solving, improves your communication and presentation skills, and most importantly, I think it helps you in time management, how work on all those assignments and different things you have to do to complete the course, right? Now, the second one is you transition within the same organization. I think this is the easiest way to do it if you're already in a product company. If you're working as a business analyst, I think it's more easier because you're already working on the requirement side, on customer specification, and so on. And of course, you could be working in other engineering and technical roles. So you just have to keep in mind that your brain is tuned to one way of thinking on how can I build this feature or product. So you have to cultivate this product mindset. It's important that if there is an internal mobility, try and talk to the team, try to work along a PM, shadow his activities, and try your hand in a few and see if you are liking it. Now, coming to certifications and courses, there are a lot of them out there today, a lot of good ones, and it's definitely useful to understand the key concepts. But you have to keep in mind that no one is going to hire you because you've completed this course or certification. So they will definitely look for your thinking ability, the experience that you already have, and whether you will be the right fit for this role. So it's a combination of a lot of things. But I think to get started, getting a certification and attending a few courses will definitely help. Okay, now before you get the call, I just wanted to add one thing is you have to work on your resume. Now you can find a lot of resources online to help you. You have to remember to position yourself correctly, highlight the relevant experience that is close to product management, say things that you have worked where there has been a customer impact, how it has helped business growth, provide a lot of numbers to show the impact and so on. So once you've got that resume going, and once you've got the call, now let's see how you can prepare. So now you have to understand that there is a time factor, right? So look, if you have if you have a couple of days or you have a week or two, you'll have to plan your time accordingly to see how you can better prepare for the interview, right? So you make notes. Whatever you read, you hear things from people, it's always good to maintain like a document where you can go back and refer to stuff. You might read an article and find something interesting, just make a note, because it's easy to forget these things, and it's always nice to kind of go back and refer to something that you probably want to use in your interview, or remember stuff that you read about long back. Now start with a good summary about yourself. This is very important. And I think this is important for any kind of interview, right? So you have to be very confident when you talk about your current role, your responsibilities, what are your top 3 achievements, and a lot of behavioral questions. I think people kind of tend to ignore this a little bit and put less effort on this, but I think this is very useful. So it involves questions like, tell me a time when you failed, or tell me a time when you resolved a conflict, or dealt with a communication challenge, or you had to take key decisions, and so on, right? So again, there is a whole list. If you look it up online, I think you will get at least 10 to 15 questions like these. Make notes, look at each question and think about what you would answer when you are asked these questions. And then comes the company research. Now, like I said before, there are different types of product managers, and every company have defined PM roles differently. Like Google mostly looks for strong technical people for their positions. Microsoft calls product managers as program managers. And there are other companies where you don't have to be technically inclined. Sometimes it could be a combination. So there are a lot of things. So when you are applying for a position, and you're getting that call, then you have to look at the company history. What are the products? What technology stack are they using? And if they have an elaborate job description, please read through it, take some time and see what specific skills or areas they are actually looking to hire. Okay, the preparation doesn't end here. It just got started. So there are a lot of more questions that, usually the interviews for product manager positions are quite elaborate. Sometimes it can take a couple of hours to do one. So you have to go a little deeper for a thorough preparation. Now, there are different types of questions that you can be asked. Now, the first one is, like I spoke before, it's about knowing the key product management concepts. Now, there are good courses to understand these concepts in depth, like why is it significant, what are the skills required, what is the difference between a product owner versus a product manager, and all subject knowledge related to it. Like I talked about before, prioritization, stakeholder management, communication, and so on. So you'll have to be very thorough with these basic concepts. The second one are product related questions. Now, usually when you are asked a product related question, it can be case based questions, or there could be specific questions about, say, designing a product. How do you redesign a product's web page? Or what would you improve about this existing product? What is your favorite online or offline product? So these are some of the common questions you have to be prepared for. So usually when answering these questions, it's important that you have a structure or thought process in mind when you are working these out. For example, there is a circles method, which actually is very important. So you have to comprehend the situation, you have to identify the customer base, you have to look at what are the different use cases that are significant. How do you cut through prioritization? How do you list the solutions, evaluate trade-offs, and then finally summarize a recommendation? So you don't have to explain what framework you're using, but keep this in mind when you're structuring the answer. I think that would give you a lot of clarity and will also impress the interviewer, because he sees that you have used some kind of structure and process to get to the answer. Now, the next type is estimation questions. Now, these are questions where you'll have to do a little bit of calculation, like how will you calculate a product's revenue? How do you price a product? What is the cost required for building this product? Or more generic ones like, say, how many tennis balls can you fit in an apartment? So again, it's the right answer is not important, but the way you list all these assumptions clearly, how do you arrive at that equation for calculating the number, and then how do you break it down further, right? So you'll have to take the problem, slice it and dice it, and then present it to the interviewer. Now, the final type of questions is case-based questions, right? So here again, there are different types. So you could have product strategy questions, on which market would you enter, or you could have questions related to competition, on how you will deal with competition for your current product or a product that the interviewer gives. How do you market a product? How do you launch a new product or service to customers? Again, cost versus pricing decisions. And you could also have specific problems related to a product, and how would you go about solving it? Like if a product is declining in sales, or if there is a problem in customer acquisition, how do you increase the customer base? How do you help with the conversion rate, and so on? Now, all these are listed in various books and various articles. You could look it up online, but one book that is very useful is How to Crack a PM Interview. There are a lot of examples where you can practice, and it will cover all of these categories. Okay, now the final step is calm those nerves. Now, this is applicable for any type of interview. You have to feel good, think positive on the day of the interview. Do your thing where you can calm those nerves, whatever works for you, whether it's listening to music or watching TV or anything, right? So make sure that you feel confident before you take that call or go for the interview. Now, this is important, where you have to try and rephrase the question if you are not clear. So no interviewer would mind that, to repeat what he has asked, or you try and rephrase the question to see that your understanding is correct. So please take some time. If you have any doubts, please make sure to ask the interviewer to repeat the question. And once you understand what the question is, don't jump at the answer. Now, you ask for a few minutes and prepare your answer, right? So if you're going to jump at it, then your thoughts can, go all over the place, and then you would not have a structure to kind of present your answer properly. So ask for a few minutes, apply a framework, like I said before, put a structure, and then provide your answer. So like I said, the thought process is more important than the right answer. So please make sure that you have this in mind while answering any question at the interview. And it's not necessary that you will crack every interview. So every failure, and I think every failed attempt at an interview, is a learning to do the next one better, because you're going to prepare better, you're going to learn from the questions that were asked in the interview. And I think that every interview is a great learning experience to definitely do better the next time, and also understand what kind of questions are asked in the interview, and will definitely help you along in the process. All right, so this comes to the end of this webinar. I hope it was useful, and I will happy to answer any questions or comments that you have. Thank you so much.